Hello, I am Pedro. I am your host for today. I would like to take you through the presentation that CrossVista has done at the SoftwareAG International User Groups now in 2016 in the week of 13th to the 17th of June in Dresden. So the main thing that I want you to take from this presentation is actually resumed in one simple word: simplicity. Simplicity, why? So as you will see in our CrossVista's logo, so we like to make things easy, and by making things easy we bring simplicity to your project management, to your release management cycle, to your DevOps strategy approach that you're doing with enterprise applications, and in this case with webMethods projects. Without much further ado, let me try and see if I can demonstrate this to you with this simple presentation. So we're a company that have been founded in 2002. We've been a SoftwareAG partner since about that time, and we're only the only company in the world providing what we call a scriptless DevOps solution with the ability to support bimodal IT. I'll talk about them a little bit later on. So let me talk a little bit about this bimodal IT agility. So what that means? It means that based on or independently of your project management approach, be it continuous integration, be it agile, be it classical cascading project management, we are able to provide you with a simple DevOps process, and this simple DevOps process will then be able to either, depending on your release cycles, be able to go live with your project changes every day, or go live with your project changes every month or every quarter, depending on the type of project that you're going to be doing, depending on the type of complexity of the approach that you're implementing as well. So with one simple DevOps process, we are able to abide to either the classical quarterly release that you do for large projects, or to do continuous integration, to going live in an agile way with small changes you do in processes or projects that require a higher degree of agility. So what I would like to get your attention is for the quote that you have here from one of our customers called North Caterins out of Belgium, in that since they started using our product, they were able to implement a lot more production interfaces for their PEX application. Their PEX application is basically a payment exchange system. That's their core business. And in order to provide payment exchanges to more customers, they need to onboard customers into their payment exchange faster, to be able to be more agile and to be able to do more business. So since they've implemented our product, they were able to actually go faster to production with more customers, and end up having to go back to SoftwareAG to purchase more licenses from SoftwareAG because their production capacity has somewhat become limited. So why Scriptless DevOps, and what is Scriptless DevOps? I will try to explain to you with a simple slide. So imagine your project management approach, be it waterfall, extreme programming, or agile project management approach. You have your enterprise applications that you are going to be developing on top of it, in this case SoftwareAG. And then what you do in the typical way is that you create scripts for exporting the code and importing it. For exporting from your enterprise application, you create some other scripts to be able to import those artifacts that you have created as part of your development process and import them into your standard VCS system. You then add some more scripts to be able to then transport or build that code into your release that you need to be able to create to be able to transport the code from dev to test. And eventually you create some more scripts to be able to then deploy those components, those releases that you have created, those new builds that you have created, to the target environments they have to do. So what that means is that you end up with a list of scripts, a variety of scripts that are specifically written for that project approach, and then need to potentially be integrated in a script-based automation tool. So most typically, a lot of people use Jenkins, for instance, a script automation tool. And in that sense, so they integrate these scripts in a way it allows you at the click of a button to potentially start one of those processes: the exporting process, the importing process into the VCS, the building process, or eventually the deployment process as well. What happens with this approach is it takes time to achieve a result, it costs some money as well, and it will create headaches. Why is that? Because all the scripts will be specific on the types of artifacts that you are working, will be as well specific for the project that you're working with, and in that sense it will also only address certain types of artifacts in your project. And basically when you start the second project, you'll have then have to go and change the scripts, copy and paste them, or eventually as well try to work on a different level of abstraction, that the scripts are not so dependent on the types of projects and artifacts you're working with, and in that sense you end up trying to build a product like ours. In that sense as well, so it costs that time and money. Why headaches? Because these scripts are in some ways not taking charge or taking care of the types of artifacts you are working with, and in some ways then be it the releases, full releases or patch releases, are not really interconnected between them, and that's what I will try to show you as we go along. So what we've done is that we've created basically this core central part of our product called the Scriptless DevOps engine. In this Scriptless DevOps engine, we have had these three main components, what we call the object-based metadata layer, the platform interaction layer, and the context-based release management layer. What do they do? So basically, the first one, the object-based metadata layer, allows us to connect and introspect to the web methods, so components, and be able to understand what is a flow service, what is a document, what is a trigger, a listener, what is a MWS portal artifact, and so forth in that sense. So we know how to get to the code directly because we directly integrate it to the platform. On top of that, we know as well what do I do with stuff. So we know that a document contains certain data definitions. A flow will potentially transform that document, or will eventually inside that will potentially be able to publish that document to the universal messaging or to the broker and so forth. So we know exactly what these things are being used for, and we also know how these things are related to each other. So you know that the BPM process, or contains certain services, contains some card artifacts, and eventually potentially as well contains some trade network rules and partner profiles to be able to implement your end-to-end process, and also to define as well your end-to-end project. So what we build on top of this central core part of our product is what we call certain extensions that allows us to then integrate the whole process without really creating any script. So first of all, we are directly connecting to the webMethods platform, so there's no need for creating any scripts for exporting artifacts out of the webMethods platform. But then we're also connected, and we have an abstraction layer to connect to a VCS system. So be it Subversion, be it Git, be it GitHub, be it CVS, and or any other standard VCS systems that are out there. So we integrate with most standard VCS systems that are available in the market, and we basically are able to transform the VCS system into a black box, being able to, as well as we export or as we upload or extract the artifacts that you are working with as part of your project from the Amazon platform, we are automatically writing them and saving them to the VS system without needing to lose focus in the work that the developers are doing. So there's no necessary for them to lose focus in the way they work with designer, by actually having to go out and actually then have to trigger the different and separate processes to check in their code into the VCS of your choice. So on top of that, in order again to give you full end-to-end visibility of your process and eventually work towards the goal of simplicity that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, so we have as well integrated to what we call the ticketing and change management systems, be it for instance Jira for Rally Agile project management with Rational Clear Quest or HP Quality Center. What that means, or it gives us the capability for having visibility and transparency to your end-to-end development process, be it that we are able to react and be triggered by the creation of a ticket, be it a ticket for a change management, a configuration management, a bug that needs to be implemented, and then automatically we are able to relate and to correlate. So the ticket that gets created with the changes, the code changes that are implemented by the developer during the process that is going to go through for changing code, creating new artifacts, and so forth. So last but not least, we have added two other components here, the component of a DevOps orchestration workflow. This gives us the capability, and we'll show you that we come out of the box with a series of template DevOps processes to help you start automatically running something out of the box. That gives us the capability for implementing what we call a real DevOps orchestration by bringing the tools and the people together to be able to help you develop and transport your code from dev to test and into production. So in order to make sure that that DevOps process can be enriched, can augment in quality, we have also created a capability based on our open API to potentially use what we call DevOps process extensions. So we'll talk about those a little bit later as we go along. So what this means that we are able to implement what we call a simple continuous integration model, or a more typical custom development model where we have various branches of code. So the branch of code associated with your production maintenance, and then we have other branches that are parallel development branches for creating new features and new releases that are already being worked on by having triggered certain changes from your business colleagues as well. So in order to show you the simplicity of all this, so we can actually go and revert or relate and refer you to the DevOps implementation that one of our customers did. So they looked at what we brought out of the box and eventually decided to even implement something a bit more simple. So in this case, we have an example of a linear process that Investec out of South Africa implemented that takes their code from development to test, to check the test results, go into staging, the staging environment, check regression results from the staging environment, and then eventually go into production in a very simple way. So what we can see here is that when the process starts, the CR, the change request, so enters development, it notifies the developer with URL, so it notifies the community on Slack, updates the action on the ticket, and so forth. So what we can take out of this process again is simplicity. So there are no platform integration scripts required. There are no scripts required for either checking code out, exporting code out, checking code in, or eventually building your releases, be it full releases, be it partial releases, or as well for transporting the code from one environment to another. So as we go through, so that's not focus of the presentation. So we'll take you very quickly through that because I wanted to go on to some other more important parts later on in the presentation. But so once the process advances, so we deploy to test. In order to deploy to test, a release is built. It is then promoted to the test repository, and once it is promoted, it will also be able to reconfigure some components of that patch release to address any parameter are required to actually run that code in the test environment. Once the test is done, so we will notify the community about the change in tests. In this case, with the URL that pass or fail, so the community will then be able to actually test the code in this case, and then based on the results of what they got from the test results, then we'll be able to impact the next step of the process by defining that tests were failed or were passed. So if they failed, it basically goes back in this feedback loop and goes back to development. If it has passed, then on success actually goes and queues the code into the staging environment. So in staging, what happens? It notifies the release managers to accept a change on when some admin has been done, and then basically, so if your release manager and or your operations manager can then accept that release to go into staging and to go into user acceptance testing. Once is that there, so basically the users will go into testing. People will get an email as well to be able to click on a link to act upon the actual results that we get. And at the end of that, they'll be able again, in the same way with the tests in the test environment, they'll be able to, depending on the test results, to go back to development if the tests have failed, or then go on and queue into the production environment if the tests have been passed. So in this case, we'll also notify, or the process notifies the release managers, email, and into the Investec community tool called Slack with the URL to accept change. That something is going to be done into production, and to basically wait for the admin person or the operations manager or the release manager to notify the process that we can actually go and release the code to production. Again, this happens automatically within CrossVista without again any scripts being involved. So if we go and try to understand exactly what happens within the development step. So this actually, we'll see that some of the steps are actually referring to subflows, and the subflow again is a relatively simple linear process that we go into development. So eventually someone will say, yeah, development is done. We initiate code review. Code review is again here at Investec is being implemented as part of a Slack community where people actually will go and see each other's code and check that everything is okay. If no one actually denies that the code has got some problems, so everyone agrees, then it can go on to build a patch release. Actually, that will trigger automatic creation of that patch release to then go and go into the process to go onto the testing environment. So in this case, the build a patch release is basically a simple call to an API or a wrapper on API that we can help you to build, and being able to again, but as part of that step, automatically does all the work that is required for building the patch release that needs to then go and be tested. So no script involved. So what does mean? So and again, so simplicity is the word here. So we have an entire automated process that is fully reusable for all the webMethods projects without any further edits. So we can definitely improve on the process, improve by adding certain quality gates and so forth that we'll talk about as well in a little while. But again, this reusability is not possible without team server a high-level API that abstracts out all the complexity required. So it means, so you have one process, be it for a B2B project, be it for a BPM project, be it for a trade networks project, be it for an ESV project as well. So it applies to independently of what types of project you're implementing. So, and I could go on and say CAF and optimize and so forth and so forth. So what does it mean? So before our customers start using CrossVista, so this is the type of questions that we go through with them to find out exactly what's been done. So what we've seen is that what they tell us that they have unpredictable and painful releases because there are developers stepping on each other's code. There's not complete VCS support from the webMethods platform. So apart from the ones that come out of the box, but we've seen customers that use TFS or use Git and so forth, and those were not supported. So automatically you need to create workarounds for that. And SoftwareAG has done a very big important step forward by introducing of the designer workstation to support some form of parallel development, but there's still certain problems within that approach that you really don't have a complete support for parallel development. So we have two limitations that artifacts sometimes are left out of sync, so the fixed features are deployed out of context as well, which means that you cannot really control whether there are some code conflicts. We cannot really control if tests have been done in isolation and so forth. And in the end as well, so what we see in some of our customers before they become our customers, that they had predominantly manual approaches to their DevOps approach, with a lot of manual releases creation, with complex scripting and difficult to maintain because they try to approach scripting approach, and the scripts were, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, were very specific for the project in hand, and they were not extendable for other types of projects that people had to do. So with that in mind, let me take you through what we feel are, and not again just not us, but based on our conversations with our prospects and our customers, is where do we save you time and money. So basically they save you time and money because of the reduced deployment times across your environments, from dev, test, prod, disaster recovery, and so forth. So imagine that you have someone that needs to either click a button or actually do some deployment. Imagine that in this case that you will be able to save 50% due to the automation of the process, because again, as we could show you as part of the demo, so all the deployment will happen automatically for you without you having to do anything on that. Second, so reduce time spent identifying code changes. So if you have a high degree of control on your code, you know exactly what you changed, because it changed associated with a specific ticket. We are able to label those changes with those ticket numbers. So when we trigger the build process, automatically again we know exactly what code is in your VCS system that needs to be picked on to be able to then construct the release build that you are going to be transporting later on. Next, so reduce time identifying root cause of errors across dev, test, production, disaster recover. Again, so if you have a higher degree of control, so you know exactly on which version of code you need to go and do some bug testing, and you'll be able to automatically understand exactly where and which branch of your code you need to work on, and eventually be able as well to get to the root cause a lot faster than in normal situations, because you don't know exactly what is the version of the code you need to work against. And based on that as well, you'll be able to have reduced time spent creating fixes, because you are able to compare certain branches of code against some other branches. You'll be able to see exactly what the differences between version A and version B, and based on that you'll be able to either merge code either automatically if there's no code conflicts, or be able to use our tool guide you through any required merging processes if there are code conflicts as well. In this case, will save developers a lot of time because of the better organization of those code changes as well. On the second slide, we have a few more, so bear with me for a little bit longer. So what we do here is that we have better tracking of changes against original code during upgrade. So imagine that you are doing an upgrade from 6.5 to 8, or from 8 to 9, or from 9 to 9.5, or 9.5, 9.6, and so your project will keep going. So you are starting your migration project. You installed in your development environment the latest version of SoftwareAG's platform that you're going to work against, but your production code is still running on the previous platform. You're still going to have to go ahead and create bug fixes for the production versions that you have already in production, unless, so in ideal world, nothing will go wrong, nothing will happen, and you'll be able to, during the time of your migration, so not have to change any of the code in the previous version, to be able to actually then go and switch on to the new one. So in most cases that doesn't happen, and you'll need to go and be able to organize, integrate the changes that you've done in the previous version into the newer versions without in an adequate and a concerted way, without implicating that you're going to be introducing errors and other problems as you try to migrate and integrate those fixes that you have created for the previous versions of your platform. So one of the things that I got from a customer recently is that they were being given from their provider a very large cost requirements for being able to introduce or to provision some new environments, that in order to be able to augment the capacity either in test, pre-production, or production environments. So what we've seen about that is that they were requiring very large costs, in this case over between 30 to 50, 40 days per event. But we will be able to, by the use of our product, being able to as well to exactly compare the new provision environment against a live environment, and by demonstrating that there are no differences whatsoever, to be able to potentially reduce the requirements for testing, to be able to then go live with this new provision environment a lot faster than previously as well. And in this case, potentially saving you a lot of time and money in these events. So business value of time to market. So if you have a more efficient end-to-end DevOps process, means that your projects go to market faster. So go back to the original, so the second slide that I presented to you today, in that we have the quote from Northgate Orinso. So once they start using our product, their project life cycle has improved tremendously, and they are able to go live with new code and new projects, new interfaces a lot faster, which means that they have a much more reactive way to react to the business changes that are more agile as well. So, and last but not all, so the business value of risk reduction. What does it mean? So you have actually, with our product, and we have many customers that tell us this, is that once they start using CrossVista, based on the better change management, better code control, is that they have a lot less introduction of errors into production based on their current or their old deployment processes. This means, so just think, so if this saves you 1 day per quarter of negative customer experience, you have a B2B, you have a customer portal, and by introducing a new version of the portal, so you actually introducing some errors that is going to contribute to the customer dissatisfaction of your customers, and if you can avoid that, so this is quite a lot of impact to your business that will potentially as well implicate into significant savings, in this case potentially so non-quantifiable, because it depends from the business criticality of your interface, depends from all sorts of other parameters as well that we could discuss with you in a parallel discussion. So what are, in this case, the benefits from a technical point of view of our scriptless DevOps approach? So basically, predictable releases against the unpredictable releases that I mentioned earlier on. So one build server managing all your environments, you have automated deployments, you have fewer production issues. Very important. So we have one tool for VCS and deployments. You have potentially just the other tool associated with your ticketing system to be able to have the single point of truth about the auditing, what's being done through your system as you went through the initiation of the project, go live, maintenance, and then future change requests as well. Each change is highly visible. There's diff merge support, and again, based on the standard process that we bring out, we are able to as well have a standard change management workflow used for all project types, be it again a BPM process, be it a CAF process, be it a CAF BPM with optimize, and so forth and so forth. So, and last but not least, we have a full automation, which means that each feature is run using a ticket and managing the context of that baseline. So feature-based patches is deployed and rollback as well. And we have a more efficient end-to-end process, making sure that people can concentrate on doing what they are potentially rolled for. So the developers can concentrate on developing, the operators can concentrate on approving changes that are required to be done, and potentially opening tickets for the developers to address certain things that they need to do, and your project managers can concentrate on managing the projects without having to work with a lot of escalations due to errors and complexity of that DevOps release management process. So what are the key business benefits? So you have development agility, speeding up your development, improve the quality of your projects, lower the development and maintenance and cost of your project as well. So this means, so with this, you're able to do more with less. So either by going back to the simplicity that I mentioned earlier on, so that simplicity will mean that you can actually do a lot more in less time, which means either you can give your workers a little bit less, a little bit more, so all the time, a little more quality of life, or you can discuss with them that they can actually do a little bit more as well, and being able to actually provide a much better service to business side of your business. So on the other side, operational effectiveness. This means that increased rate of production releases, lower the number of production issues, which means that your operational colleagues or your operations people are going to be a lot more happy with us, because it means that they know that the code that's been delivered can go to production without creating any problems. So the bridging of the working of together between developers and operators is going to be a lot happier troop as well, based on the simplicity approach. So it means as well that your DevOps maturity is going to be higher, which means that with our product you can lower the total cost of ownership for the enterprise apps, or basically tell them that it will cost less to do projects, or do even though then go ahead and provide more business, so more projects for the business, being able to actually do a lot more on the enterprise applications than you were doing before. So one last point to actually bear in mind, so the larger and more complex the teams and the environments and projects, the greater the savings. So the more you do in your projects, the larger the teams, the larger the frequency of your release management as well. It means as well that the savings will be even greater with our product. So to finalize, I would like to take you through, so what are the other components that we can bring in to actually improve the end-to-end DevOps approach with CrossVista. So the last piece of the puzzle that we mentioned earlier on in the presentation. So imagine that you have your DevOps process here in the main box. So you have integration to your ticketing systems on the top left side of the slide. You have the integration with your VCS system. So on the bottom side, so you have integrations with the different various development environment, and again, as part of that process, integrations with the test environment and then production environment, or any others that are part of your systems architecture. So imagine, so a ticket comes in, the ticket starts development, means that one or many developers will work against that ticket. Once they check those changes, the code goes automatically to the ticketing system. So what could happen now? Either you go directly to test with that new change, or like in this case, Investex did during with that process implementation they have done earlier on. Or what you can do is that you can integrate that process with some code complexity optimization as a tool like SonarQube or SoftwareAG's own GCS code quality review tool. So this means that even before you go to test, you can go through a quality gate, meaning that you can detect any sort of inconsistencies within the code that's been checked, be it at naming conventions, be it that constructs that should be there or code that should be there, and so forth. So that's okay. So you can actually go and relegate or delegate the control of the over the process to other tools. So imagine, so we have certain customers out there that potentially they buy CrossVista for their close integration with the enterprise apps that we're supporting. However, they have made a strategic decision to use other script scheduling or other DevOps tool like Jenkins, IBM Error Code, CA Release Manager, etc. So it means that we can as well, based on our OpenAI, delegate control over the process to a third-party application if required as well. So imagine that you're going to testing and your test environment is currently busy by testing. So project A release 5.5, and you want to go and start testing really project B release 5.6. What happens here? It means that either you have to wait because you want to make sure that your tests happen in isolation, or you can go out and use our process to actually integrate directly with Command Central, SoftwareAG's Command Central platform, to potentially go ahead and in an agile way go and spawn a new environment to be able to go and test the new code that you want to transport without having to wait on the previous one, and being able to have to be more agile. And at the end of those tests, you can then go and shut down that environment and let it either leave it there or actually just go and eliminate it if required. Once the code is in testing, so we then can trigger your testing, be it by calling out to the GCS test tool and then triggering the test associated with the code that was changing, or go out and call into IBM Green Hat, or based again on our API, we are able to actually integrate relatively easily to any other test tools that are out there that allow you to then potentially implement some automated testing as part of this process, and being able to be again more agile in actually taking the code all the way to production. So we are able as well to integrate to SoftwareAG's center-site active SOA product, which means that we can introduce what we call a governance aspect to this DevOps approach. And this means as well that automatically, if there's a change on a specific asset that requires, based on the policy of that asset within center-site, that requires some specific approval to be able to have it changed or to have it transported to a different environment, then we'll automatically wait for that approval to happen before we actually proceed with the process and go to the next environment up the chain. And last but not least, so imagine that based on this DevOps approach, we collect a lot of information about your actual project costs from time point of view, how long it took to develop, how long it took to test, how long it took to transport. So what does it mean? It means that we have also built an integration into portfolio management product from SoftwareAG called Alphabet. This means that we can actually feed in the information into the project, planning and project module from Alphabet, which means that we are able to actually feedback and provide real data to be able to help the business then plan better either the maintenance costs that you have on old projects, or the actual changes and change costs that you have for specific project that you're still very proactively changing. So our approach, as I mentioned before, so based on the fact of having this Scriptless DevOps engine, the DevOps orchestration, integration to ticketing and VCS, and then these DevOps process extensions. So we hope to provide a way to making things easy for our customers, and based on that, to simplify their lives along the projects they do on top of the enterprise applications, in this case, webMethods. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any questions, please send an email to pedro@crossvista.com.